I was delighted to call in this morning to your show, David, because I guess you and Elliot do a great job. So I'm delighted to be a part.
I appreciate it. We've interviewed close to 100 Pro Football Hall of Famers, and we love hearing the stories of their careers. In fact, we just talked to Art Donovan a couple months ago before he passed away. What a great guy he was.
Oh, absolutely, and he was always a guy with a story that was somewhat humorous. And I played just Artie many years, and he was truly a great football player also.
How did you end up going to Grambling for college?
Well, actually, probably the coach more than anything, Coach Eddie Robinson, who, as you know, before he passed away, he turned out to be the winningest coach ever, and you'd only need to meet him for a couple of minutes to know why. I mean, he was the most dynamic man. He could make you feel like you was his only real child for a moment, and in the next moment he could make you realize that kicking your butt was the best thing for you.
Because back then there was a lot of segregation where the traditional big-time programs weren't recruiting the black athletes.
No question. At the time, I was telling someone the other day, at the time I was playing football in the South, very, very few of the southern schools in the SEC and other places were integrated. And so I would say to you, I never played against a team that had white players on it until I went to Cleveland.
What was it like at Grambling? What were the practices like there?
At Grambling, you know, it was interesting because Coach Robinson, he just insisted that you would not suffer any lesser situation for not getting the right information, the right style, the right everything. So he made it a point to make sure that every Grambling player was kind of up to date. I can tell you, when I went to Cleveland, I had the sense that I had not missed anything that any white player possibly would have done, because I had kind of covered it at Grambling.
And you weren't the only Hall of Fame player he coached. He coached several Hall of Fame players, Eddie Robinson.
Oh, yeah, Buck Buchanan, Willie Brown. There are a couple others who skip me right now. But now Coach Robinson, at one time, it was interesting. We had 13 players that had been in the pro league at the time. So he truly was a coach probably ahead of his time.
What a lot of the former Grambling players said is if Coach Robinson didn't recruit them, their high school coaches recruited them to Grambling because they either knew Coach Robinson personally or they played for Coach Robinson.
I don't think there's any question that was true when I was there, and it's been true. It's probably been a history at Grambling where the old-timers went out, got jobs in the high school system, and they followed you back to Grambling.
When you got drafted by the Browns, what did you expect?
Well, frankly, I didn't know what to expect. I was a little bit fearful of some of the challenges, but once you get there and you kind of get acclimated, it's football. It's football any way you look at it. Now, I remember Coach Robinson called me when I was up at camp, and he said, Willie, he used to call me Big Dave. He said, Big Dave, how is it going? And I said, Coach, it's going okay, but, I said, I feel like I spend half the time explaining where Grambling is. And he kind of said, what? I said, I feel like I spend half the time with the players and either other people explaining where Grambling is. And he said, there was a pause, and he said, well, let's give them a couple of weeks. They'll know. They'll know. And I never forgot that because he was probably right. Within maybe not a couple of weeks, but within a month or so, everybody could appreciate Grambling.
So you go from one legendary coach to another in Paul Brown. What was the difference between Paul and Eddie Robinson?
Well, I would say Coach Brown, he was far more of the sense. In fact, one of his main statements was that we can show you, we can teach you, but we can't do it for you. So he just felt that there was a certain amount you had to bring to the game, to the practice, and everything else. And I would say Coach Robinson had a similar opinion, but he probably would hand feed you a little bit along the way. Whereas Coach Brown, he was said, hey, get out there and do it, and he expected you to do that.
And you had some big-time players on those Browns teams back then. We had Otto Graham. Was Marion Motley still there, or was he already retired?
Oh, no. Marion Motley, in fact, I was at the Hall of Fame game recently, and I had a chance to meet Dante LaValle, his wife, and several other players. I couldn't help but just look and think for a minute. When I met Dante's the wife, of course she has since passed away. I just said, "Wow, this is really looking back over time." But Otto Graham's wife was there. There were several other players that their widows were at the hall.
And then, in practice, you were going up against Otto Graham. There to be something.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because Otto was probably, there's no one probably was more adept at executing the skills and the fundamentals of football than Otto Graham.
What made Otto so good?
I don't know. Maybe he obviously had to have coaching along the way, but I think his mindset just led him to kind of always be reaching for that next level, reaching for that next opportunity to do it better.
How did that differ from Art Starr, who was a teammate of yours?
Well, no question in my mind. Many times I've said that Bart, if there was a player that in my mind reminded me of Otto Graham, it was Bart Starr, because they had very similar habits and behavior, and I think Bart in particular probably there was no one that wanted victory any more than Bart.
What I never understood is how you ended up leaving the Browns and ended up with the Packers. Did the Browns know what they were giving up on?
You know, it's kind of interesting. When I was at the Hall of Fame recently, the guy, and he says, "Hey, Willie, every time I see you, every time I think about you, I think about what a mistake from the Browns." Well, you know, it turned out probably to be a mistake to the extent that I went on and had the career that I had. But, you know, I never held it against Paul Brown. I just said he was trying to find another team that would rival some of the past teams he had. And I never held it against him. I just went out and tried to kick their butt to make sure that he remembered.
When you went to Green Bay, I mean, they were basically the bottom of the barrel in the NFL.
Well, it's no question. In fact, they used to tease in training camp all the time about if you don't like it here with Cleveland, we could always send you to the Siberia football at Green Bay. And believe it or not, when I went up to Green Bay, I could sense what players back at Cleveland and other places were thinking. It was just not a team that was focused and was prepared each Sunday to go out and win. And that's where you enter Lombardi, and he changed that whole mix to the extent that where you went out every Sunday or whatever day it was, you went out prepared to win.
Yeah, because the Giants didn't want to hire Lombardi because they didn't think New York was ready for an Italian coach. He goes to Green Bay, and the whole culture changed. I mean, Bart Starr, you, Paul Hornig, Jim Taylor, it was a whole new game.
Oh, no question. And, you know, I'll say this. I've said this before, and I'll say it as long as I live, that there's no question in my mind. Lombardi created more diversity in the National Football League than any coach ever. And I say that simply because he brought black players in, not thinking so much whether they were black or white. He was thinking, can you play football and make us a better football team? And we basically did that. And I think to the very end, he felt that he had accomplished something.
Oh, exactly. I mean, your teammates Herb Anderley and Dave Robinson said the same thing, that he basically brought the black athletes up to Green Bay, made them part of the city, and he basically had expectations. They said that one of the players was dating a white girl, and he said, "Do you love her?" He said, "Yeah." He goes, "Then you're going to marry her. You're going to make her an honest woman." Yeah.
I think that was Mark Fleming, Lion Walters, rather. There's no question that there are many Lombardi stories that, and some of them, you say, well, really? But I can tell you, I have not heard anything that I didn't equate as being accurate with Coach Lombardi.
I'll tell you one thing, Vince Lombardi was smarter than Paul Brown. He put you on the defensive line and took you off the offensive line.
Well, I would say yes, you're probably right. There's no question I was a better suited player for defense, and probably just because of my intensity and my speed and quickness, and there are a lot of things that Coach Brown just didn't recognize that Coach Lombardi immediately saw it and put it in place.
What I find amazing about Lombardi is he only lost one playoff game his entire career.
Yep, and he would say, and some of his old saying, he would probably say, "We didn't lose that game. Time didn't permit us to win."
Because it was what? You lost to the Eagles? Yeah,
in the '60 championship, and he was right there, no question in my mind. I think the game ended with us down on about their 15-yard line, and hey, give us another couple minutes and we would have scored and probably won the football game. So I always adhere to his thought that in some instances we didn't lose that game. Time didn't permit us to win.
Chuck McNarrick, the way he tells it, I'm sure, is that he stopped you guys single-handedly.
Yeah, to the extent that they stopped Jimmy Taylor and he sat on him until the time ran out.
He knew what he was doing. When you won that first...
Yeah, but he was also a great football player.
Oh, exactly. I read somewhere that you would have probably had over 100 sacks if they kept track of when you played.
Well, I probably read the same information. And, you know, there's no doubt in my mind that, to me, it was probably unfortunate they didn't keep track of sacks. There's no question in my mind. I would have been someplace north of 150 to 160.
But there was Deacon Jones who coined that term.
Well, that's interesting because, of course, unfortunately, we lost Deke about a month ago. And Deke was a great rusher. But I can tell you that he had great support with Merlin Olsen and Rosie Greer and Lamar Lundy. And, you know, many times simply a quarterback didn't have a place to go. So Deke, with his great speed and quickness, he could get there. I know this. The times we played the Rams, for the most part, I remember one game they beat us, and I can tell you, I had more sacks than. There's no question in my mind over the series that we played when I was there. I had more sacks than Deke.
What a lot of the players were saying this year at the Hall of Fame is they were wondering who was going to take over as the leader of the Hall of Famers. They said it was Ray Nitschke originally who basically brought everyone together at Canton. Then it was Deacon Jones, and they're just wondering who's going to take it over. A lot were saying Larry Little. Some were saying you. Some were saying Bobby Bell, to basically bring all these guys together.
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought, of course, I kind of, even though I was in Canton, I did not. I'm having knee surgery, and I got kind of waylaid on the trip over to the well, whether it's hotel or country club where they had the event. But I can tell you that I can see a number of players stepping forward, and the Ray Nitschke thing, he left quite a legacy. Flying over to Canton or into Cleveland, I was with Dick Butkus, and I didn't have to look at Dick and say what a great player he was. A player like Dick could very easily take over, but I don't know whether he would have the interest.
No, I mean, because Deacon was a personality, and he knew basically he knew how to sell himself.
Yeah. You can say that again. He knew how to sell, and he didn't spend a lot of wasted time. Deke was always selling.
What was it like when you won the first championship with Green Bay?
Oh, well, you know, I can tell you of the 5 championships that I was a part of, there's no question. Each one had a special place, and that first championship we won in Green Bay, well, when we beat the New York Giants, there was nothing sweeter than that because it was Lombardi succeeding, it was the Packers succeeding, it was all the things that we probably wanted to accomplish in Green Bay at the time, and it was a great feeling.
It was kind of like Davey versus Goliath, because they were basically New York and you guys were the small town.
No question about that. And you know, it was interesting. I saw Sam Huff at the Hall of Fame game, and I was teasing him a little bit about the rivalries between he and Jim Taylor. And it was interesting because I can tell you right now, I spent about 10 minutes with the two of them together, and they were still basically challenging each other.
Considering Huff caving his helmet trying to tackle Taylor?
Yeah, no question. And as far as I know, that is definitely true.
I mean, it had to be tough, though, I mean, on the Packers offense back then because, I mean, on Bart Starr, because he had to hand the ball off to Taylor and Hornick. There wasn't much time for him to throw the ball.
Yeah, that's true. Our running game at the time was probably equal to our passing game. We threw when the situation required us to throw. But I think at the heart of what we were all about was if we needed to move the ball, we could run it. And Jim Taylor and Paul Hornung probably was two of the best players of that time back then. They just wouldn't be denied.
That's where your former team screwed up, though, is when they didn't keep Bobby Mitchell in the backfield with Jim Brown. They could have had a running back combination like you guys with the Packers.
Yeah, when I left Cleveland, I talked about I talked about what a combination Jim Brown and Bobby Mitchell could have been. But I also used to think, I said, what would have happened if Ernie Davis had lived and with Jim Brown? Would somewhere you probably would have the record books today full of information covering the two of those guys.
Do you agree Jim Brown was the greatest player of all time?
Oh, no question. I saw him at the Hall of Fame again. I hate to keep saying it. For the first time I'd seen Jimmy in a while. And, you know, like all of us, a little hunched over, a little of a problem when he tried to walk. But I said to myself, boy, what a player.
One of the reporters looked at me and says, why is Jim Brown not wearing a gold jacket at the gold jacket dinner? He's the only one. I looked at the reporter, I go, it's Jim Brown.
You know, you probably couldn't have given him a better answer.
He never wanted to be basically like everyone else. He wanted to stand out. He went his own drum.
Jim Brown was Jim Brown, and the more he was probably unlike other players, the better for him.
I thought he was going to be the last person they announced at the Gold Jacket dinner. I was surprised when it was Bobby Mitchell.
Yeah. Jim was seated right in front of me, and I kept saying, hey. But what a player.
Oh, he was something. I mean, he could have played in today's game and still put up those records.
Oh, that's why when people ask me could Jim Brown have played today, and it's almost I have to look at him and at them and say, are you serious? Jeff Long, as far as I'm concerned, could have played in any era of football, including now and any time before.
He was the size of defensive lineman, but he was fast as can be.
Absolutely.
Was the first Super Bowl, you think, Lombardi's favorite when he beat, or first championship Lombardi's favorite when he beat the Giants?
Well, that championship clearly was a great moment in his life, and you know, even in a private conversation, he told me how much it meant for him to succeed. There's no question that as we went on and won other championships, including the first two Super Bowls, were important to us. But I'd have to go back and say the Giant championship, the NFL championship, was probably as big as any.
That first Super Bowl, what was that like against KC?
Yeah, it was kind of a strange game. In some ways, we went into the game very, very conservative and very concerned that we did nothing to encourage Kansas City, and that was totally due to Coach Lombardi. He sat us down one day and he said, "Don't forget that you look at this team roster and they got some of the same All-Americans and everything else that you played against." And I would say by game time, he had us very concerned. And we went out, and to this day, I will remember at halftime when we all had a moment to refresh. He got us together. He says, "I just want to say a couple of things." And he said, "That is, you went out and played 30 minutes of football, and you adjusted to the Chiefs." He said, "Now I want you to go and play 30 minutes of Green Bay Packer football, and let's see can the Chiefs adjust to you." And it was almost like, I mean, that couldn't have been more profound, because he said it, you had a sense that he felt it, and all at once, we were a different team the second half.
Who was the toughest offensive lineman you went up against?
I would say that, I always had trouble with the guy at Dallas. What was it? Neely, I guess it was. He always gave me a tough time. And George Priest, who played at Baltimore. But I would say, in a sense, probably Neely was the toughest guy for me.
Did you have a favorite moment in the NFL?
Did I have a favorite moment?
Right. Is there one play that stands out in your career or one game?
Well, I had that one tackle on Johnny Unitas when we beat him over there that carried us on to that second championship, I believe it was. And I hit Johnny Unitas and he fumbled, and they called it the $1 million fumble. And I always laughed. I said, "Well, that's interesting. If it's $1 million fumble, it was done by probably a $10,000 guy."
When you went in the Hall of Fame, how did you feel?
Well, you can't help but feel proud and special about it. I watch guys now, including most recently, the Hall of Fame. It is almost like so many. I used to say when we played the championship, those first 2 or 3 championship games, it was a game with a lot of festivities. By now, it's an event that includes the football game. And I kind of feel the same way about the Super Bowl. It's just it's something that you accept and you participate and you do all those things on the basis that you want to be a part of something, and that was really probably what it was all about at Green Bay.
I liked it better when I used to watch it on TV when they had the induction right on the steps of the hall, and it was more intimate. Now it seems like it gets lost in that stadium.
Oh, no question, no question. And even though they made some attempt to improve the situation this year, I agree with you. It will never be as ceremoniously presented as it was when we were introduced from the steps of the hall, and it went on from there.
You have 11 members of your team in the Hall of Fame, with Dave Robinson going in this year. When do they get Jerry Kramer in there? This guy deserves to be in.
I can tell you right now, I have even tried to research and looked at every aspect of the game. The only thing I'd have to tell you that there is something above and beyond football that has denied Jerry, because there's absolutely no way you could keep him out of the hall based on his performance and based on his career otherwise. So I absolutely wished I knew.
What's even worse is the senior committee keeps naming him. They named him twice, and he's the only person named twice who hasn't gotten in, other than Dick Stanfill. And you know what? What are they doing? Dave Robinson said when he heard a Packer was going in with the senior committee, he just assumed it was going to be Jerry Kramer.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone can quite. I haven't heard anyone that says anything that gives me an absolute sense of, well, this guy knows what he's talking about, or he got something. I just think that it's one of those things that I don't know whether we'll ever know.
No, exactly. And one of your former teammates said, one of the Hall of Famers, that the only person Kramer couldn't stop was Alex Karras, but no one could stop Alex Karras back then.
Yeah, Alex did give Jerry a pretty tough time, but that's 1 or 2 games out of a season, and I would say to you, Jerry would win most of them.
Well, and Bart Starr says your left tackle should be in also.
That what?
Your left tackle should be in the Hall of Fame too.
Oh, Bob Skoronski. There's no question in my mind. Bob, opposite Forrest Gregg. Gregg always got all the play because the right tackle probably is in the scheme of things in a way that. And Gregg was just a great, sound, consistent, every play football player. And Bob Skoronski was similar, but he's quiet and didn't have much to say. And so at the end of the game, people would rush over to Gregg and get his comments, and they'd walk right past Bob to do it.
At the Hall of Fame, when I was there this year for the second time, the only thing that turned me off the Gold Jacket dinner was when you've got Warren Sapp there trying to tell everybody where to line up on stage, having to be the last one off, and that Rich Eisen I'm basically saying greatest defensive lineman in history, my guy. I mean, you should be objective, and he's not the greatest defensive lineman in history.
Oh, absolutely. I thought I thought it was almost a joke. Warren was a good football player, but I would rate he'd have trouble making my top 10.
Oh, yeah, top 10 defensive linemen. You're up there. You've got Gino Marchetti, Bob Lilly, Henry Jordan, all those guys. Even Archie White.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. You know, sometimes you go there and you listen to things and you end up saying, well, it's their moment.
If he would have said he was the greatest running back of all time, I think Jim Brown would have got up on stage and made a comment.
No, I don't think he'd be that.
I felt bad for Don Shula. I didn't realize how bad a shape he's in.
Oh my God! I the same way. I saw him that Sunday when we were leaving. He was getting in a car to go out to the airport, and boy, he's all but a cripple.
Exactly. I mean, I talked to him a couple months ago. He's sharp as can be. I saw him go up there at the Gold Jacket, and I'm like, oh my God, he's got two people helping him up there. He looked.
Yeah. Don really had slipped a great deal from when I saw him last.
Exactly. And then you got Jim Otto, who no one's going to help him up there. He was going to go up there no matter what.
Yeah. Boy, he was an old timer.
Oh yeah, I think who was the oldest guy? Charlie Trippy.
Yes.
So, thank you again, Trippy. Charlie. I mean, you've got from the players from the '50s all the way till now going up there. It's incredible.
Yeah. You know, there was somebody made a comment, said something, and maybe it was because of being the 50th and other things, but they said, you know, I have a sense that we're seeing something play out this weekend that maybe it's the last time we'll see this kind of thing. And as touching as that can be, you can't help but think, well, there might be a lot of reality in what this person is saying.
Oh, you're right. I mean, there were some guys who couldn't make it because of their age and their health, like Hugh McElhaney, Y.A. Tittle, but any of the younger guys who didn't come, they should be embarrassed because, again, this is a once-a-year thing. It's an honor to be in there, and they shouldn't forget it.
Yeah, and, you know, there's the thing that's really a little scary to me. Some of the young guys, they don't attach the importance to the game and the occasion and all that thing. It's probably some of the old timers, but for the most part, I will accept what the Hall continues to do, and I think it's a great facility.